reviews and watching other reviews of Game of Thrones is, as a book reader, knowing what's going to happen, like specific plot details that have to happen, and seeing how non-readers react to it. So of course, for this past week episode, Walk of Punishment, episode 3 of season 3, I was extremely excited to see the reactions to what happened to Jaime, and so it was quite fun to see how everyone reacted to it and what they thought of that scene. I'm sorry this is up late, but again, I have work to do, so they'll probably all get uploaded on Wednesday until I'm actually done with school. But thank you for your patience, and I hope you enjoy this review. And I have all the scenes written down in order, so we will be going in order this time. So we start off with the funeral of Sir Hoster Tully, who is the father of Catelyn Tully Stark and the grandfather towards Robb. And we see her brother Edmure try to shoot these arrows to kind of like the funeral pyre, but he misses 3 times, causing a lot of tittering and ridicule by Robb, who gets a very good side eye from his mother for being a twat, and for being an asshole. And finally, Blackfish decides to do it himself and just fires it. And I love how he does it, because he doesn't even have to look at it. He basically just grabs the arrow, shoots it, throws it back, and is like, whatever, I know I got skills. I don't need to wait to see how this thing turns out. And he does his thing, and it was just really entertaining to watch, because there was this really great banter between how you can tell he doesn't really think that Edmure is doing things properly. And then we get a scene between Edmure and Robb in which Edmure talks about how he led this attack to the mountain. They rescued this mill, and they suffered casualties, but they killed more Lannisters than they lost people. And Robb had a fit about this because he had his own plan about what to do with the mountain, and he talks about how his side needs men more than the Lannisters need their men, and so that what Edmure did was irresponsible, and he was doing it for his own needs. And you can tell Blackfish agrees with him because he's making all these snide comments in the back. However, my question was, Robb, is that if this is so important to you, why didn't you have ravens sent out to inform the rest of your allies about what your intentions are for your battle plan? Because if their land, even if it's just a mill, like I know the mill thing was an excuse for Edmure to find glory, but just in general, if your land is under attack and you have the chance to save people, why wouldn't you take that? I mean, if Robb had made his plans clear, then that miscommunication would have never happened in the first place. So, like, I know what Edmure did was silly, but at the same time, I'm like, Robb, why don't they all know that this is your plan? And then we get a scene between Blackfish and Catelyn. Blackfish was Hoster Tully's brother, so that's Cat's uncle. And they have a really well done scene together. Michelle Farley brings a lot of emotion to Cat, even though her story has been really shredded, because they really just reduce her to being a mom archetype. And she talks about how when she was a girl, she would sit up by the window and wait for her father to return and wishing for that to happen. And now, with Bran and Rickon being missing, and she doesn't know what's wrong with them, how many times they waited for her and if she'll never see them again. This was a very touching scene, you know? When I ignore the differences and stuff, I have to admit, this was a very touching scene. It was well done, there's a lot of emotion in it, and you can understand why Show Cat feels this way, because she feels like she's failed to do the family part of her duty in trying to help Robb and trying to help the resistance more. And they have always made it clear that TV Cat has wanted to go home from the very beginning, and so you can tell that now she feels the regret of not going when she wanted to and that kind of thing. So I thought it was very well acted and very emotionally strong. The next scene we get is the fantastic scene with Tywin, Varys, Littlefinger, and then Pycelle. Tywin is running his first meeting of the small council, and Littlefinger, trying to be a little kiss-ass brown-noser, walks in first. Varys is giving... I love Varys. Like, I always liked his character in the books because he was very sneaky, and I loved how he, like, played with the idea of this eunuch being one of the most powerful men in the city. But I love Show Varys because he's so sassy. Like, he is always giving Littlefinger the best bitch please side eye looks ever. And so you have, you know, Littlefinger runs in first to go sit right next to Tywin, then it's Varys, and it's Pycelle hobbling over. Then Cersei comes, and Tyrion comes, and Cersei takes the chair and she puts it on the other side of the table next to her father. And you're just like, she just does it with like this kind of like, it's complete silence as she does. It's just with her moving the chair. And then Tyrion comes, takes the chair, and because he's not big, he drags it. And at first I thought he was gonna drag it all the way next to Cersei, but instead he dragged it right to the front of the opposite side of his father. And it was just such a well done scene. You know, all the actors managed to express so many things about their character with just little scene. Like this whole little scene showed the animosity between the people in the council and the frustration between other people. So Tywin knows that Jaime has escaped because it's kind of common knowledge all around in the area, and he's wondering why the people here haven't heard of any news about it. And he talks about how Varys and Littlefinger should have enough spies among them to know what's going on. And now that Roose Bolton is the new holder of Harrenhal, Varys makes a little mockery thing about how now he's the real lord, not Peter Baelish. And now Peter is going to be heading to the Vale to marry Lysa Tully, Catelyn's sister, and that will make him the new lord of the Vale as well. And this is meant to bring the Vale into the fold and have Robb Stark's enemy now be his aunt as well. And now that Peter is going to be leaving, this is the opening for Master of Coin, and that is this position that Tyrion now fills. He's now the Master of Coin, and you can tell he's not really happy about this, but Cersei of course brings the sense that she knows that he'll make the position, he'll do a very good job. And you know that even though it's going to be not the position that he wants, that Tyrion is the kind of person who will take advantage of whatever he can. The next scene is Brienne and Jaime, a little bit of them, and you have the men who captured them singing The Bear and the Maid, which is a song about cunnilingus, so that's always fun. And Jaime and Brienne talking about how Brienne is probably, well, first they started snarking each other back and forth because Brienne's like, I thought you were the best fighter ever, but you know, maybe people just like to brag about people with big names, and you know, she just took him over. Jaime's like, I was like in chains for a long time and stuff. It wasn't fair. Don't pick on me. He's very like reluctant to admit that he lost that kind of rivalry. And he talks about how Brienne's probably going to get raped by a lot of the men and that she shouldn't just fight back. But Brienne, of course, is like, of course I'm going to fight back. And you can tell Jaime's like, I'm glad I'm not a woman because that's not going to happen to me. And I thought that was, while it's, it was a scene with a lot of snark in it, I think that's kind of like a sad reality about the situation that these women are in, is that like even though Brienne is powerful and she's strong, she still is at threat to these very gendered kind of punishments that can be distributed to her, and because she doesn't have a weapon in chain, she's very vulnerable in this position, but she knows she's going to give a fight back. Then we have Arya with the Other Brotherhood without banners. Basically, they decide to follow him. They decide to follow Thoros of Myr and the other ones to just see what's going to happen with the Hound, and they bring him into this caravan. They're traveling together. Hot Pie decides that he's going to stay because he's not a warrior. He doesn't have time for that life. So he makes basically Arya this little cage shaped like a wolf. It was a very cute little farewell to Hot Pie and a good step towards Arya going on her journey. And it was just a little scene, but I thought it was very clear to see how like Arya is continuing her journey. Gendry is following them around. Gendry, I know they're going to do something different with him, so I'm interested to see how Gendry is going to play a bigger role in the show, because I think they are setting up for a bigger position. And I guess if they make it work, good for them. I think he's going to take Eric Storm's character. I think he's going to take over that role in the show. So I'm interested to see how that goes along. And of course, I'm looking forward to Arya's future scenes because I love that part. Then we also have an unneeded Talisa scene where she talks to the two Lannister boys that are currently held hostage, because when Edmure did the battle at the mill, they captured a few of the men. They captured two young boys who are Lannisters, but they're like distant cousins to Tywin, so they probably don't mean much to Tywin. That's what they assume. So, but they asked a question about Talisa. They asked Talisa if Robb really turns into a wolf, if he eats the blood of his, eats the flesh of his enemies and all that kind of stuff. And Talisa's like, yeah, he totally doesn't eat little boys. I mean, I never want to set up the brothers, but at the same time, I'm just kind of like, they just don't do much with Talisa to make her an interesting character. She's just not interesting. There's nothing compelling about her, and I think that they have failed to make her a character that we can enjoy. Because it's like, you can have characters that aren't really, that don't exist and make them interesting. Like the Spice King from last season, I thought was a really good made-up character that they did for the show of fleshing him out as someone who really didn't have a big role in the actual novelization. Ross has been mostly useless, but at least they try to like use her to condense things that they don't want to add new characters for. But Talisa is just not really interesting or compelling. I mean, there's nothing that she brings to the table that we need her for. So I kind of feel like she's just filling space, taking up time that we could be doing other things with. Then we go to Mance and Jon. They find these slaughtered horses in this kind of intricate circle pattern in the snow, and they realize that the men that were there were probably White Walkers. And like how we saw that scene where some of the men in episode 1 of the Men of the Night's Watch were all bloody and battered, this is probably from that battle. And whoever didn't make it, they probably became Others or White Walkers, however they refer to them on the show. And they talk about sending Jon and a few other people to go climb the wall and go to attack Castle Black. And Ygritte kind of has a kind of forlorn expression once he sees Jon going away. The man says that he tells Oral to keep his bird watching around. He's gonna light the biggest fire the wall has ever seen. So that's gonna be interesting to see what happens with Mance and his crew. Then we go back to the other Night's Watchmen, and they return to Craster's place. We get a small ghost cameo, which was just kind of like, oh, remember direwolves, they still exist. And it's like, okay, we see him for like a few seconds. And then Craster basically says like, I'm such a giving person. And then all the men start looking at his wives, and Jilly is pregnant and she gives birth to a boy. It's like, and in a sick way, it's just kind of like, you know, and Sam sees the baby being given birth to and everything. And it's just like, it's a good scene, but just kind of like, I just kind of like want to move it along. Like, I wasn't bored this episode, but there's some things I feel like, why couldn't they have just done this all in one go? Like, they keep spreading stuff out through episodes that you can just really do in like one series of like, one episode just have a lot of skips to it. Like, we are used to time jump and these kind of things that's gonna happen. Let's just keep it going. Then we go to Theon. Barry returns and rescues him, and he rides east towards where Yara is supposed to meet him, and then that scene goes to a cut. And then at the half an hour mark is the scene between Melisandre and Stannis. And like, Stannis' character has been very poorly handled. No, not poorly handled, because I think the actor is great. He's very attractive as well. Like, he's a hot man. So that's also a plus. But they seem to be focusing on an aspect of his character that wasn't really there. I mean, yes, he trusts Melisandre and everything, and yes, he and Melisandre have an intimate relationship because that's how he makes the shadow babies. But like, him talking about, I want you, which, you know, it's like, that's not really in character who he is. I mean, there's nothing to imply that he has a real, like, he wants to do it because he's sexually attracted to her. It's more of a duty thing. And he was never that fanatically obsessed with Melisandre to begin with, so I don't know why they place so much emphasis on this relationship. I mean, it's good acting, but first of all, it makes Stannis look crazy when he's not, and they're taking basically the one flaw one of the flaws that he has is that he trusts Melisandre, and taking it to like the 10th degree. And that kind of bothers me, because I think like Stannis, he has his faults, but he's also a well-rounded character. He's not just, you know, I'm a king and blah blah. There's more to him than this, that. And also Melisandre, as a result, she becomes just another one of the evil witch trope characters. And it's like, she was never a vindictive, cruel person. I mean, yes, she did some kind of fucked up stuff with Davos, and she wasn't perfect towards him, but she also respected the relationship between Davos and Stannis. And I just don't think that they're doing as good of a job of Melisandre as they could be doing. Then we have Dany, and she goes through the walk of punishment. She tries to give one of the men a drink of water, but they don't accept it, and he just, like, the man asks to be killed. And Sir Barristan and Sir Jorah are having, like, the competition for Dany's affections, mainly Jorah, because he's like, this is my woman, my Khaleesi, let me have it. And they talk about how Jorah wants Daenerys to buy the slave because they will be an army, and they'll be an army that won't rape, that won't kill, that won't hurt anybody the way other armies will come in and do. that slavery is not the right way for her to do it, you'll have supporters. And he brings up Rhaegar, who was an honorable man. And Jorah says, yes, he was very honorable, he fought honorably, and he is dead. And so Dany has these two men conflicting about what's going on and what she should do and what the path she should take is. And then she goes to meet with the slaver, and she says that she wants to get all the Unsullied and all the boys in training, which is 8,000 plus people. And the man's like, you can't afford this. And she says that she will trade all of them in for one of her dragons, the biggest one, Drogon, that's his name. They haven't named all three of the dragons yet, and I don't know why they haven't. I mean, it's not something that would be that hard to do. But she trades Drogon for all of the Unsullies, and she also gets, God, I forget how, Missandei. She also gets Missandei as well to be as a gift for her. So she gets all these people, and Jorah and Barristan during the meeting are like, Khaleesi, no, you can't do this. And after the meeting, she's like, do not undermine me in front of people ever again. And I'm glad she's standing up for herself. I mean, a lot of people give Dany shit for being entitled, but everyone is entitled in this show. Everyone thinks they're entitled to deserve something because most of the people in the show are nobles, and when you're a noble, you're gonna think that you deserve things because of your name, and Dany thinks that too, and I don't think it's that big of a deal most of the time. Last season it was a little over the top, and there are flaws with her entitlement because, you know, there are reasons why she wouldn't have got the throne in the first place, but at the same time I don't see why she's not allowed to have pride in herself, considering how much she was shed on her entire life. And probably the reason why she's so entitled now is because she knows what it's like to be treated like shit and not to be worth anything in the eyes of other people, and she probably doesn't want to ever be that way again. Then we get the biggest waste of time scene with Podrick and Tyrion. Alright, so Tyrion goes to Littlefinger to get the books for the Master of Coin thing, which, okay, that's relevant. But then he decides to give Pod the gift of 3 prostitutes to help him lose his virginity and be a real man like everybody else. Alright, whatever, show. That's the way you want to play it, go ahead. It was a way for them to show boobies. I'm just like, alright, fine. That's not even the most horrendous part of that scene. Then we skip to Bronn and Tyrion talking about how Littlefinger just borrows gold from everybody. He's not a wizard or anything like that. He just borrows the gold. And they owe Tywin a shit ton of money. And they also owe, and I wrote it down, the where is it? The Iron Bank of Brothers. They owe them, you know, so much money, and they will try to get their coin back, and if they don't pay it back, they're gonna finance other people. And then the shit comes in, because then Podrick returns, and he says that he was apparently just so good in bed that the prostitutes did not take the money. And this is the point where I was kind of like, you can tell that for this scene, the audience was just dude bros and guys, and that this scene had to be written by a guy. Because one, okay, so the virgin, nerdy, awkward guy, and don't get me wrong, I love Podrick, but the virgin, awkward, nerdy guy all of a sudden is like the best sex guy ever. Okay, sure, fine. And then on top of that, he's so good that the prostitutes are like, no money. I'm sorry, what sex worker, especially a sex worker who has a pimp, is going to be like, you know what, boo, you were so good, I don't need that money. It's not like my pimp will beat me or take it out of my own wages or anything like that. I mean, whatever. It was just so stupidly done. It was done to appeal to the lowest common denominator in the worst possible way. I mean, what's the point of that scene? To make Podrick look cool and then Bronn and Tyrion like, you have to tell us what happened. It was just so skeevy and childish and cartoony. It was something that you would see on like Archer. It was not Game of Thronesy. It was just a stupid scene, and it was just tacky, and I don't know why it was in there. Then the second to last segment is when we have Theon running away. He's kind of getting away, but then he ends up getting hit in the face by like a man's, and he falls down, and the men grab him, and one of the men's about to rape him, and I was like, please God, no, because I can't watch that. Like, rape scenes, I cannot watch them, and I didn't want to see that. Like, I don't like him, but you don't want anyone to be in that kind of position. It was just horrible, and I was so happy when Barry saved him again, and he's like, let's go, and they helped save him, and they had a little hint for book readers about who the character is, who Barry's character is, and I was like, yes, that's a really good hint for the book people. But otherwise, you know, it's still ambiguous about who the guy actually is. But you know, Barry saves him again, and they go off to try and presumably to go to Yara again. I believe that's probably where they're gonna go. And then the final scene is Brienne and Jaime are both tied to trees, and this man comes and he is gonna, you know, have Brienne be raped by like himself and a few other guys. Brienne fights back, breaks one of them in the nose, and they start dragging her towards the back. And the entire time, and then Jaime, of course, he feels bad about this, and so he tries to save Brienne by telling the man that Brienne is worth more untainted because the father will give them sapphires in exchange, like a ransom for the daughter. And the entire time he's talking, you hear Brienne screaming in the background, and it's such a hard thing to watch and hear it at the same time. And then you have Jaime talking about how his father will offer him this money for that, and how, you know, he's worth so much to people, and he kind of like tries to like talk his way out of being let go from the tree, and the guy's like, sure, he brings him over to the table, and the guy's like, you think you're such hot shit because you're Jaime Lannister, you're Tywin Lannister's baby, but you're nothing without your daddy. And so he kind of like tries to put Jaime in his place. And so he lets him go. He has like the knife to his eye, and you think he's gonna choke out his eye or something like that. But instead, he just pulls it back. And right when you're not expecting it, we think it's just gonna be over. All of a sudden, hand gone. I was like, bullets. I did not think they were gonna do it like so casually. Because there's a scene in the trailer where Jaime's kind of has his hair like flip back and he's screaming. I thought that was gonna be the scene, like that's how they were gonna do that hand scene. But I didn't expect it to be done so just kind of like, whatever, psh, oh, scene done, the credits are rolling. It was just so like, good job. When they do it right, they can do it right. It was just a very brutal, you just see it like, it's just, it was very, very, very good. I was like, I wrote it down like, they took his hand. I was like, I knew it was gonna happen. I was just kind of like, oh my god. It was just so, it was good. It was good. This episode is like, I know a lot of people who have been really bored by these past 2 episodes because they're very much set-up episodes. And I think that's a valid response for some people. I mean, a lot of this is stuff that I think, well, I like these 3 episodes because I like the build-up. I like the political thing. I like the setup because I think the setup is just as good as the payoff because I know the payoff is going to be good. But for those who do not know what the payoff is going to be, I feel that they are being rather slow. And that, you know, as much as we discuss these kind of things, they also have unnecessary parts. Like, why did we need to have this whole scene with Podrick? There's a waste of time. The whole scene with Talisa, like, it could have been shorter. They waste time where they don't need to have lighter moments, but I don't think that in the long run they actually add up to that much because they're just so out of. My only fear about Dany's storyline is that it's moving very fast, and I'm not sure what they can do with her for the second half of this season, and then the next season, which is a continuation of the same book. A lot of stuff has been very much condensed, and while I think it's been good to bring her back to the way she was in season 1, instead of and refixing the kind of damage that was done in season 2, I am concerned about what they're going to do with her. Are they going to bring us stuff from the 5th book? Because that would be good, but then it's like, what are you going to do when those things come out? It's just kind of like, I wonder how it's going to go. But I'm also interested. I just hope they don't make up stuff again, because like we saw in season 2, when they make up stuff, it's not good because it doesn't always fit in what the characters are. And the way that they see the characters, you know, while they have every right to view the characters the way however they want, they're making this adaptation, it has to be true to how we've seen these characters before. You know, as much as I don't enjoy TV Cat, her character is kind of consistent with the way that they have portrayed her in the show. So even though she'll have these things where she's being motherly and silly, I think it fits with TV Cat. But if they keep going back and forth and making up stuff, it just seems very cluttered, and I hope they don't do that. I wasn't disappointed by this episode. I think that the most disappointing thing was the project scene, because I just feel like at this point we should be above this kind of stuff. Like, it was useless, it was pointless, and it was just gonna have boobies in it. And there are so many ways you can do that without it having to be tacky, you know. But this was just tacky. It was absolutely 100% tacky, and I wasn't a fan of it. But other than that, It's alright. I just hope that now that I feel like now the build-up should be done and let's move on to get stuff done. I know next episode should be a fight that I've been looking forward to since the season began. So crossing my fingers, hoping for